Agnes Gonje Boyaju was born on August the 26th, 1910, in Skopje, Serbia. When she was 12, Agnes felt the first stirrings of a religious vocation, though she had, to that point in her life, never as much as laid eyes on a nun. Agnes applied at the age of 18 to the Loreto Sisters, the Irish branch of the Institute of the Blessed Virgin Mary, which had a strong missionary presence in India. During her postulancy, she took the name Sister Mary Teresa of the Child Jesus, after the recently canonized Little Flower. After spending a brief period in Ireland, she set sail for India. When she arrived in India, she was dazzled by its luxuriant natural beauty and shocked beyond words by its grinding poverty. Though she had known poverty in Serbia, nothing prepared her for what she saw in India. The conviction grew in her that service to such poor would involve a radical simplifying of her own life. At first, Teresa was isolated from the worst of Calcutta's poverty. She was teaching geography and English behind the high walls of a Loreto convent school. But eventually she began to teach in a grade school some miles away, and she came face to face once again with dreadful poverty. For the next several years, Teresa, now called Mother since she had taken final vows, worked at a furious pace, teaching, administrating, caring for the sick. So arduous was her work that she experienced a kind of breakdown and was sent to Darjeeling, the restful place where she had been a novice, in order to recuperate. On the dusty train to Darjeeling, she had the experience that would change her life. She received the call of God to be a missionary of charity, the summons to serve the poorest of the poor, to follow Jesus with a reckless abandon. She called this the hidden treasure for me, and she understood it as a summons to slake the thirst of Jesus for souls. When she returned to Calcutta, she submitted herself to the spiritual direction of Father Celeste van Exem, a Belgian Jesuit who would prove an extremely helpful and important figure in her life. After a year of prayer and discernment, Mother Teresa and Father van Exem brought the idea of founding a new order to serve the poorest of the poor to the Archbishop of Calcutta, Ferdinand Perrier. A wise character, Perrier tested the vocation of the little nun, throwing up all sorts of objections and roadblocks. Despite his opposition, she persisted, and the Archbishop's admiration for her grew. Perrier eventually consulted experts in canon law and devised a way to release Mother Teresa from her vows to the Loreto Sisters and to found her own community. In April of 1948, formal approval came from Rome, and Mother Teresa said simply, "Can I go to the slums now?" In the first weeks and months of her new life, Mother Teresa experienced, understandably enough, bouts of discouragement and loneliness, and the accompanying desire to return to the relative comfort and ease of Loreto. But she persevered. She knew that if she was to serve the poorest of the poor, she had to live like them. And then something that we've come to expect in the lives of the saints. When a work is of God, people are drawn to it. And so many of Mother Teresa's former students came to join her here in the slums of Calcutta. They became the first missionaries of charity.
Good morning, sister.
She quickly formed them into a religious community, fashioning a rule which combined elements of the Jesuit and Franciscan spiritual traditions. She put special emphasis on their identification with the poorest of the poor.
Right from the very beginning, I wanted to serve the poor purely for the love of God and to give them what the rich people get with money. I wanted to give to the poor for the love of God. That's the spirit of our society. That's total surrender, loving trust, and cheerfulness. We must be able to radiate the joy of Christ, which is expressed in our actions. If our actions are just actions by themselves, without giving that joy to the people, our poor people will never be able to rise up to the call which we want them to have. That means to come closer to God.
There was also a kind of poverty built into the rhythm of their day. During the week, the sisters rose at 4:40 a.m., brushed their teeth with ash from the kitchen stove, and scrubbed their bodies with a small bar of soap that had been divided into 6. Between 5:15 and 6:45, they meditated, prayed, and attended Mass. They ate a small breakfast and were then on the streets doing their work by 7:45. They returned at noon for prayers and a small midday meal, and then rested and did spiritual reading until they returned to their pastoral work in the slums. At first, the work of the Missionaries of Charity was restricted here to Calcutta, but beginning in the 1950s and 1960s, the order began to spread, first across India and then around the world. There were establishments in Venezuela and Tanzania, United States, Australia, England. By the end of the 1990s, there were over 500 establishments on 6 continents. Mother Teresa said, "If there are poor people on the moon, we shall go there too." In time, Mother became an internationally renowned figure, winning the Nobel Peace Prize in 1979.
I am grateful and I'm very happy to receive it in the name of the hungry, of the naked, of the homeless, of the crippled, of the blind, of the lepers, of all those people who feel unwanted, unloved, uncared, throw away of the society.
If we really want peace, if we are sincere in our hearts that we really want peace, today let us make the strong resolution that in our country, in our cities, we will not allow a single child to feel unwanted. How does peace come? Through works of...
Mother Teresa died on September the 5th, 1997, at the age of 87. When her body was displayed for public viewing, it was of course clothed in the habit of the Missionaries of Charity, but it was also left shoeless, revealing her remarkably gnarled feet. For many people, those misshapen feet spoke most eloquently of her hard years of service on behalf of the poorest of the poor.
Loving Father. He's a loving Father for us all, and always ready to forgive, to forget. He's always there. We don't have to go far to look for him. It's right inside the heart. Loving us, calling us, protecting us in tenderness and love. We need lots of love to forgive. And we need lots of humility to forget. Because it's not complete forgiveness unless we forget also. As long as we cannot forget, we really have not forgiven fully. And this is how we hurt each other. We bring the one of yesterday also, and we keep on repeating. That means that we have not forgotten. We need humility to forget. And that's why it's very important to learn humility. And that's one of the beautiful things that Jesus has asked us. Learn of me because I'm meek and humble of heart. He puts first meekness. Meekness with each other, meekness our brothers and sisters with, and the humility with God. And so both this meekness and humility, meekness or love or compassion, whatever you may want to call it, completes that forgiveness. Because before we forgive somebody, we must realize that we need forgiveness. And that's where humility of heart comes. And forgiveness is the greatest presence of peace.
What we see in Mother Teresa is elevated or transfigured temperance, a disciplining of the desires which goes far beyond the requirements of justice, so as to serve the infinite demand of love.